Hey there, hope you're doing well. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at Snowpal's APIs, at least a number of them, if not all of them. Just take it as an introduction, if you will. If you don't know of the APIs that our API suite comprises, then this should serve as a good introduction. What I suggest you do is after you watch this video, when you get a chance, just go take a look at the links we're going to include in this video. So you can get more acclimated with our APIs and then figure out which ones make the most sense to you, or what will serve your current or immediate needs in the short term and in the long term as well. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. Our APIs are self-serve, but we do offer professional services to help you integrate our APIs. So we're more than happy to work with you in that aspect as well. So without further ado, let me do a screen share and actually speak to some of these APIs. Okay, hopefully you see my screen there. Let's start. This is in no particular order, so I'm going to just get started. So these are actually, it looks like I forgot to include an arrow here. Let me do that. Okay, the size of these circles of these APIs is not an accurate reflection of the size of the APIs themselves in terms of the number of endpoints, the RESTful endpoints each of them supports. But with that said, at least I want to give a representation of which one's bigger than another. So take that with a grain of salt. But our conversation API, it's got like 25 endpoints or so. That's the smallest of our APIs. Building blocks, if I'm not wrong, is one of the biggest ones. It has close to like 375 endpoints, give or take. And the others, they range anywhere from like 100 to 200 to 250 endpoints. So these circles should give you some, the idea is at least for them to give you some indication of what, how big these APIs are. Now, the image that's to the right of these APIs is the Postman collection. I'll include the links, but they read along these lines. So for content management API, it would be content management API, literally, a dash delimited. And if you hit that, it's going to take you to content management. Similarly, if you want to go to like project management, as you probably guessed it, I'm just going to change this to project. I'll take you to the collection for project management API. Let's say access control. I'm going to do access control is called access control list API. So it's access control list API.snowpal.com, and so on and so forth for the other APIs as well. So all of them have Postman collections for your dev teams to quickly run either on the browser or run on the native client and then hit the ground running essentially. Okay, that's, so we have documentation presented in more than one way, because we know, depending on the stakeholders, we've seen that some, your product teams might like a certain kind of documentation compared to your dev teams. So we have Postman collections to serve as documentation, primarily for the development teams. From what you've seen, the dev teams actually, it's a very popular tool. And if you're consuming APIs at all, I'm pretty certain you're familiar with Postman. The product teams, on the other hand, do use Postman, but I've also seen that they like API developer documentation that's sort of presented a little bit differently. So we have those on our API on develop. If you go to developers.snowpal.com, you can see this documentation improves by the day. It has a list of the APIs. It's got examples. We're adding more recipes, so you can actually look at what some of these recipes are. We also have SDKs. I did not mention that this diagram does not include that. Excuse me. But this, with the API guide, the Postman collection, the API documentation, the recipes and the reference, the combination, all of this is going to, hold you in good stead. Essentially, take care of all of your needs to be self-serve. And if you need help, you're more than happy to reach out to us as well. We'd be more than happy to help you out, either through professional services, which you can purchase on AWS Marketplace, or through other means. There's more than one way you can actually reach out to us for help. Now, let's say this is the API documentation. Let's look at some of them a little bit more, but let me just talk for a minute or two about each of these APIs. So APIs are building blocks. As you know, the idea behind providing APIs is so that you can focus you and your team can focus your core energies on actually solving your core customer problems and not have to reinvent the wheel. So Every API has a certain unique selling proposition. Our APIs are meant to serve as fundamental building blocks. Now we have an API called building blocks that basically is, like I said, it's got close to 375 endpoints, if not more. Just about anything you need, everything you need, I should say, to hit the ground running to build an application, be it a web app, a mobile app, or a microservice, you should find an endpoint or two or more, or a directory of endpoints in this particular collection. So just go to Building Blocks API and you can peruse through the actual documentation to get a sense of what these folders are. Postman doesn't support multi-level, so we've numbered it in a way so it's kind of a flat list. So if you see keys 1 through 5, it means they're all related, but we also made the separation so you don't see like 85 endpoints under one directory, which makes it pretty difficult to read. So we have it as a reasonable number, like 10 to 15 endpoints maybe per directory. And then we scope it. So the chart related endpoints go into charts, dashboards go into dashboards, note related endpoints go into key notes. So the separation is nice and clean and keeps it small. And if you're actually interested in, after subscribing to the API, if you're working on one or two features, and you may focus on certain directories and may not necessarily be all of them, at least not on day one. So that's Building Blocks API. And before I get into the rest of the APIs, remember that we have Postman collections, like I mentioned. We have developer documentation. In addition to those two, we also have production apps to serve as actual references. So if you go to like snowpal.com, this is a project management platform that's built using some of these APIs, so you can see them in live action. There's thousands of users currently onboarded on this platform. Similarly, there are iOS and Android apps on the App and Play Store. So you can go to ios.snowpal.com. Let me actually open a different browser. We have a URL redirect, so I need to remove the HTTP there. Yep. So this is on the App Store, the project management app. We have a full-blown native mobile app. And similarly, if you want to check out the Android app, you'll just go to android.snowpal.com and you can check out the Android app. So that's just an example. And since it's a URL redirect, when you're doing that, remember to not use HTTPS because it's just a convenient way to actually redirect you to the app and Play Stores. Okay, so let's get back to the APIs. So building blocks is one, and then there is content management. If you're building, our API, the content management API supports 3 levels of content in the hierarchy. You can actually combine that with another API of ours, which is the custom attribution API, to sort of expand that and have infinite levels of hierarchy. That's a more complex, relatively more complex topics, so we'll get to it in subsequent videos. This one's a high-level introduction. So the content management API is anything that you're dealing that relates to content. That's probably an API that you want to certainly take a look at. Now, these APIs are fundamental building blocks. The one that is called building blocks, but even all the other ones are actually building blocks. Content management starts with, has an emphasis on content management, whereas project management has something to do with, it also has support for Kanban and how you present this content and bulk actions around, let's say if I want to go to a local host just so I don't want to share like production data. So if I go to a project management app and let's say I create, these are all, okay, there's a project key. This test data, so take it with a grain of salt. So we have Kanban support. Now again, Kanban means that you need a lot of actions here. Bulk actions, copying all of the cards from this list, moving the entire list, and so on and so forth. So for that, we have a lot of these APIs that actually support this. You're adding a new project list, and then you can actually rearrange the project list. You can go here, you can say reorder project list, and then you just drop this project list to the top. Then I close it, it goes. So, this becomes the first one. This is just a production working example of a platform that, again, has onboarded thousands of users. Now, you might have a different Kanban view that solves a slightly different problem. The idea behind the project management API is that it provides all the fundamental building blocks of implementing this interface. Imagine how complex it would be if you had to implement it by taking care of both sides of the problem, the user interface, UI, UX, and the API side of the problems, right? So we're giving you everything you need from a server-side standpoint. That way you can focus your energies on just building what you need to do and solving your core customer problems. Project management. Let's go to Classroom API. If you're actually building something for schools or universities or to satisfy the needs of tutors, an extremely noble profession, teaching, as we know, we at Snowpal do teaching as well, which is a different product, nothing to do with our APIs. So we respect that as much as we respect any other profession. It's super important to be able to share your knowledge with other people. If you're building apps to cater to the education industry, Classroom APIs will let you create students, collaborate content with teachers, create assignments, projects, do grades, compare student performances, compare class performances, and a whole nine yards essentially. Conversation is an API that's, if you want to add conversations as a functionality to your app, it's not to say that it's going to replace something like Slack. That's not the idea. The idea here is more like LinkedIn messaging, where it's all right. It's not the most powerful one, but it actually works. You connect with people, you exchange some messages, and then if they become part of a team and you get onboarded, then you take the conversations to Slack and other more powerful platforms. But the initial conversations are actually had on LinkedIn. That's the idea behind supporting conversations as an API. The project management app that I was just showing you that also supports conversations. You can add conversations very easily into the mix of things, add private and group conversations and all the basics of conversational elements, if you know what I mean, into your web and mobile applications. That's the idea behind publishing the conversation API. The status API, if you're building a Slack app to publish statuses, as an example, your team is reporting statuses on a Scrum call rather than waste time in the call with 8 people or 7 people in the team reporting statuses. You can actually have a quick Slack app that's built. There are some out there, they could be better, but if you want to get started with building a status app, whether it's a mobile app or a web app, I'm just saying Slack because it seems like a better place, better starting place for you to build a status app essentially. We might actually do it at some point at Snowpal, consuming our status API to publish a Slack app, just as an FYI. So you might want to beat us to it by using our own APIs and building something quicker. So you can check out the status API. Again, to do that, you'll just go to statusapi.snowpal.com and you can look at all the endpoints. We're going to do more videos talking in more detail about the specific APIs and the endpoints. But like I said, most of them run into hundreds of endpoints. It's going to take lengthy videos. The idea behind this one is to just, sort of scratch the surface. What else? We talked about classroom conversations. Okay, we have a couple more to go, at least for this first video. Custom attribution. If you want to support custom attributes like text attributes, let me actually pull this up so you know what. So if you go to custom attribution, and you can see the list of attributes, attribute types we support: text, number, date, file, single select, multi-select, and nested single select. This actually 7 of them, but that is 80 to 90% of all attribute types that you should ever need. It's a very succinct list of attribute types, but it'll solve 90% of your problems because it's extremely powerful. We'll do separate videos on this, but if you want to do custom attribution, create custom attributes, add them to a bag, associate these attributes or bags to resources, you will be best served by leveraging integrating our custom attribution API. The next one is access control. There's a few other articles that we are actually beginning to write to publish on our product documentation page. So one other page is you can subscribe to products.snowpal.com. And you can even go, we categorize that by APIs, podcasts, education, our managed services and whatnot. So subscribe to this newsletter to actually, get notified both about technology advancements in the larger world out there and things that we are doing on a daily basis at Snowpal. So certainly sign up for the newsletter. So there are some articles on access control API that we wrote recently. So if you need to do any level of access control, whether it's privileges, roles, customization of these roles and privileges, teams, members, and build any no matter how complex your access control needs are, our API should actually serve most, if not all, of your needs. It's another powerful API which serves as a building block, but as an access control ACL building block to building your systems. So that's an initial list. We talked about here again, the developer documentation is pretty cool. You can go look up, you can quickly do a search. Let's say if I go here, I want to look at private conversations. I'm just going to say private. It says conversations 1.3, add private or group conversations. It takes you right there. You can also go, let's say I'm going to a conversation API. And then I can go to 1.3, add private or group conversations. You can run it in Postman, hit the ground running by subscribing to it. Now, how do you subscribe to it? You can do it in one of many ways, and we support multiple licensing models. You can pay by request or subscription by going to aws.snowpal.com. It'll redirect you to the AWS Marketplace with the list of all our products. That's one way to do it. It takes like click, 3 clicks. Within the first 5 minutes, you should actually be able to subscribe to it. Get an API key and a product code. The product code, because we have multiple API products, so the product code identifies which product you have subscribed to, and then the API key is unique and private to you. Please don't share it with anybody. So you can do that and then pay by request or by subscription. Or if you need a private offer, let us know. We can create a private offer for you. We're beginning to create even more products. We have some set of products on AWS Marketplace to support different pricing models, and we're adding more into the mix. You can also say, hey, you know what, we are a multi-tenant system, so you can literally use this by subscription or request. But if you prefer to actually have that in your infrastructure, let's say you're on AWS or Google Cloud or Azure, we can provision our services for you in your infrastructure. Not a problem. That's one way. Second way to do it. Or you could say, you know what, we are okay for you to run the request in your infrastructure. Just point to our database. So we have complete control and control over our data. That's fine as well. That's a nuance, the second model, but let's call it 2A and 2B. Or you might say, you know what, we actually have a different DevOps team or a platform engineering team, and we want complete control over these services, and we want you to have no control over the services when we start leveraging them, meaning you don't know when the requests are made, how many are made, where the data is persisted. So we just wanted to be part of our ecosystem. That's fine as well. You can purchase commercial licenses for one or more APIs. Hit us up and we'll let you know how you can go about that. And then you can basically purchase the license and purchase upgrade, maintenance and upgrade licenses as well. If you wanted to, we highly recommend you do so. So every time we publish upgrades, you can, benefit from those upgrades, bug fixes, enhancements, features, and whatnot. So there's multiple licensing models, but you can start with the AWS Marketplace. What else? Let's quickly talk about the steps. Here, I just put together a quick table here. Take it with a grain of salt. You would review the APIs, look at the Postman collections and developer documentation, assign it to somebody in your team. Here I'm saying it's Krish, it's in progress. And then pick APIs of interest. You might want to start with 1, 2, or more APIs and add others into the mix, because our APIs are built to work independently, but collectively they add a lot more value. It's almost like watching an episode of Seinfeld. You'll still appreciate it, but if you watch the whole series, you probably want to appreciate it a bit more if you're a fan of the series. In other words, we are, as you can tell. So the APIs work independently and they work collectively as well. So you use them as it makes the most sense to you. Subscribe to the APIs. So like I said, purchase a license or, get the API key, however you want to do it. Do that and then import the Postman collection after you receive the API key and the product code. You can import the collection and, again, if you're licensing it, you would need the API key, but if you're subscribing through a traditional backend as a service, then you'll get the API key and the product code and you can implement the collection for your dev team to start work. And then literally you can hit the ground running, build your web app, mobile app, or microservice by focusing on your core customer problems. This way, you're not spending time reinventing the wheel. Imagine having to build this. Not necessarily to this extent, so it's this robust or scalable and extensible. Even if you had to build a smaller sized variant of this, it is going to take a sizable amount of time and money, and it's probably the time, money, and effort you would be better off spending someplace else. Hopefully, right? Hopefully that makes sense here. Go take a look at the guides here. We're improving these guides. We have tutorials, we have blogs that speak to a lot of these APIs. We have videos, podcasts, plentiful documentation. As you can tell, it's colorful, so it doesn't make for a boring read. We try to make it as interesting as possible as well. It's one thing to make it, it's not a boring Google Doc, as you can tell. We have different representations of the APIs. So different people like to see it differently. So this one, for instance, actually gives you the count. I can see it says 350 plus, content management is 300 plus, project management is 250 plus endpoints. Classroom is also 250 plus endpoints. Conversation is, maybe there isn't a count here, close to like 25. Status is 70 plus endpoints. Custom attribution is 35, but it's actually very, a packed set of 35 endpoints that are very powerful. Access control is 75 endpoints, and that number is growing. So you can get, overall, I think if you add all of these together, it's like 1,500 endpoints, give or take. So you can literally build most of what you want without having to staff, hire, spend, train a backend team. You may or may not even have a backend team. If you don't, you probably shouldn't probably do it unless, build that team unless it's needed. Certainly not when you're building your MVPs, and perhaps not even later. If you have a team, maybe I'm pretty sure they have other more important things and bigger fish to fry. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel, so you can use their APIs to actually power your systems. That's basically what I wanted to cover in this quick video. I mean, quick for me, it turns out to be like 20 minutes. Hope that made sense. But if you have more questions, certainly hit us up and we are more than happy to help you out. Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.